Hey guys, so I want to tell you about something that happened to me about 2 months ago. My name's Ray. I do home inspections in the Pittsburgh area, and for about 3 weeks last fall I was talking to a woman online who I thought actually paid attention to me. The thing that ended it was a karate class that never existed. I should back up. I've been doing inspections for 16 years. Before I went out on my own, I worked for a firm in the South Hills, and I did maybe 200 inspections a year, and eventually I knew enough that it made more sense to keep the money myself, so I got licensed and bought a truck, and that was that. The job is mostly solitary. You drive to a house somebody's about to buy, you spend 3 hours going through everything that's wrong with it, you write it up, you move on. I like it. I like that there's a right answer. Either the flashing is installed correctly or it isn't. Either there's moisture in the crawl space or there isn't. I've been doing it long enough that I notice things without deciding to notice them. My brain just flags stuff. It's made me good at the job, and I think it's made me a little difficult to live with, which is something my ex-wife Karen would probably agree with. Karen and I separated about 10 months before this happened. It was her call, and I'm not going to tell the whole story of that here except to say it was the slow kind. Not a blow-up, not one bad thing, just a long drift that neither of us did enough about until she decided she was done drifting. We have 2 kids. My son Derek is 16 and my daughter Cassie is 12, and the arrangement is we split the weeks. So every other week I'm in the house alone, which is a thing I was still figuring out how to do. The house is quiet in a specific way when your kids aren't in it. Not peaceful quiet, just quiet. My buddy Marcus had been on my case about the dating app thing for months. He'd met someone on Hinge the year before and he was annoyingly happy about it, and he kept telling me I just needed to put myself out there. I told him I didn't know what that meant at 44. He said it meant downloading an app and answering some questions. So one night in late September, on a week when the kids were at Karen's and I'd eaten cereal for dinner and watched most of a documentary I didn't care about, I downloaded it. I answered the questions. I put up a few photos, one from Derek's graduation thing last spring, one of me at a job site because Marcus said women like a man who works with his hands. I wasn't expecting much. I'd been with Karen since I was 28 and I genuinely did not know what I was doing. I matched with a few people that first week. Nothing clicked. The conversations were polite and went nowhere. And then about 3 weeks in, on a Thursday night in October, I matched with a woman named Diane. Her profile said she was a travel nurse currently placed in Cleveland, originally from outside Pittsburgh. That last part is what got my attention, not Cleveland, the originally from here part. It felt like there was a real person behind it, someone who'd actually written their own bio. She had dark hair and this very direct way of looking at the camera in her photos, not smiling big, just looking. I swiped right and forgot about it and went to bed. She messaged me first the next morning. She asked what kind of work I did, and it wasn't the polite version of that question. It wasn't small talk. It felt like she actually wanted to know, so I told her, and she came back with something I hadn't been asked before. She wanted to know if it was ever sad. Walking through houses where something had obviously gone wrong, a roof that had been leaking for years, a foundation someone had patched and never really fixed. Did I ever think about the people who'd been living in it? I sat in my truck in a client's driveway and typed back for 20 minutes. I told her yes sometimes. I told her about this one house in Bethel Park, older couple selling after 40 years, and you could tell by the way things had been maintained that at some point one of them had stopped being able to keep up with it. There was something in the modifications, the grab bars, the ramp to the side door, that told a whole story without telling it. I don't know why I told her all that, I just did. That was the first night. After that, we talked every day. She was working nights that first week, and she'd text me on her breaks. Long messages, not just check-ins. She was working with a patient she couldn't stop thinking about, an older man who didn't have anyone coming to visit, and she'd been bringing him a coffee from the vending machine on her rounds because it was the one thing that seemed to matter to him. She wrote about it in this way that wasn't performed. She wasn't showing me what a good person she was. She was just telling me about her day because that's what you do when you're talking to someone. I asked about video calling around the end of the second week. She said the hospital had a strict policy about phones on the floor and she was always on her breaks in a supply room with bad signal. She said she'd call me when she had a real day off. That seemed reasonable. She was a travel nurse working nights in a hospital. There were going to be logistics. A couple days later I asked again, just casually, said I'd love to actually see her face. She said she'd been on since 5 in the morning and looked terrible, and could we do it tomorrow? Tomorrow she had a call with her landlord about a problem with the heat and her phone kept cutting out. The week after that, she actually did call me. She called from the parking lot of a grocery store, said the signal inside was bad and she was just grabbing a few things. We talked for about 12 minutes. Her voice was warm and a little scratchy, the way voices get when you've been up too long. She laughed at something I said, and I remember thinking this is actually happening. But she had to go before I could ask about video. I told myself that was fine. I told myself I wasn't going to be that guy who makes everything weird about the camera thing. What I didn't tell myself, at least not out loud, was how much I'd started looking forward to her name on my phone. I was in the middle of a 12-hour day, going through somebody's basement in Mount Lebanon, and my phone would buzz and I'd see Diane and there was just this small lift. I hadn't felt that in a while, maybe longer than I wanted to admit. About 2 weeks in, she asked about my kids. Not in a general way. She asked specifically, like she remembered I'd mentioned them once, and she wanted to know more. I told her about Derek, who is in that phase where he barely talks, but you can tell he's actually fine if you know how to read him. And I told her about Cassie, who was 12, and going through that thing where she's figuring out who she wants to be and trying out different versions of herself every few weeks. I mentioned that Cassie had been talking about maybe trying out for soccer in the spring. She'd watched some of the World Cup with me the previous summer and gotten interested. It was one of those small hopeful things you share with someone when you're starting to let them in. A couple days later, Diane sent me a long message about a hard shift, and at the end of it she said, "Also, how's Derek doing with the karate? Is he liking it?" I read it and smiled. She was always asking about the kids. Then I stopped. Derek doesn't do karate. Derek doesn't do anything that involves leaving the house voluntarily if he can avoid it. There is no karate class. There never was. I figured she'd mixed something up. She was tired. She talked to a lot of people. She'd probably gotten a detail crossed. I almost texted back something like, "Ha, no karate here, you might be thinking of someone else," and moved on. But I went back through the thread first. I wanted to find where the confusion had started so I could clear it up. I scrolled all the way back to the beginning. I found the soccer thing, Cassie thinking about trying out in the spring. I found nothing about karate. I found nothing about Derek doing any activity at all except that I'd said he was 16 and the quiet weeks were hard. I put my phone down on the kitchen counter. I went and got a glass of water and stood at the sink for a minute. Then I picked the phone back up and went through the thread again. Slower this time, every message. Going back 6 weeks, it still wasn't there. She hadn't misremembered something I told her. There was nothing to misremember. The karate class came from somewhere else, and the only way it came from somewhere else was if she was talking to someone else the same way she was talking to me. Someone who had a kid in a karate class. Someone who thought she was paying attention to them. I didn't sleep well that night. I kept telling myself there was an explanation I hadn't thought of yet. I kept not finding one. The next morning I did a reverse image search on one of her photos. The main one, the direct look at the camera, dark hair. I'd never done that to anyone before, and I sat there for a second before I hit search, because doing it felt like an accusation, and I didn't want to be wrong. I wasn't wrong. The results came back with an Instagram account, Melissa Prato, dental hygienist, Scottsdale, Arizona. The photo was from 3 years ago. Her account was mostly public. There were other photos, different settings, same face, same direct look. Melissa Prato was a real person who had never heard of me or anyone named Diane, and had nothing to do with any of this. I sat at my kitchen table for a long time. I didn't know what I was feeling exactly. It wasn't anger yet. It was more like the floor had moved slightly and I was waiting to see if it was going to move again. I called Melissa Prato that afternoon. I found her through Instagram, sent her a direct message explaining the situation, said I was sorry to bother her and asked if she'd be willing to talk. She replied inside an hour. She said she'd been through this before. Someone had warned her a couple of years ago that her photos were showing up on a fake account. She'd reported it, nothing had happened. She was angry in a way that had clearly been sitting in her for a while. She said she'd take my call. We talked for about 25 minutes. She was helpful and sharp, and I could tell she'd thought about this more than most people think about things they can't control. She told me the prior warning she'd received had come from another woman whose photos were also being used, and that woman had told her something specific. The man running the fake accounts had made a mistake once before. He'd sent a message to the wrong person. A detail that belonged to one target had ended up in a conversation with another one. Same operation, same method. After I hung up, I sat in my truck in my own driveway and thought about the karate class. That night I called Gail. Gail lives 2 houses down. She's 48, she's an HR director, and she's been helping me with paperwork since the separation. Insurance stuff, things Karen used to handle that I didn't know how to navigate alone. She's the kind of person who shows up prepared. I texted her and said I needed some help finding someone, and she said she'd be over in 20 minutes. She came in and sat down at my kitchen table and put her laptop in front of her and a notepad beside it and looked at me and said, "Okay, what's the name?" I gave her everything I had, the profile name, the phone number Diane had been texting from, the Melissa Prato connection, what Melissa had told me about the prior mistake. Gail ran the phone number first. There are lookup services that trace whether a number is a real carrier line or a VoIP account. She used one she had access to through work. It came back as VoIP, registered to a Youngstown area code, not Cleveland. Youngstown. She said, "Okay, that's interesting." She wrote it down. Then she started working the geography. Diane had said she was originally from outside Pittsburgh, which covers a lot of ground, but there was a detail she'd dropped once. She'd mentioned a specific exit on 376, like she knew it. The kind of reference you make without thinking, because you've driven that road your whole life. Youngstown to Pittsburgh, you take 76 to 376. That's the road. Gail searched for men in Youngstown with a logistics or operations background. Diane had mentioned once, early on, that she had an ex who'd worked in warehouse management, and it had made her wary of men in that field. It was one of those vulnerability details people offer up to seem real. Gail figured if the detail was operational, maybe the background was close to the truth. She found a LinkedIn profile, mostly scrubbed. The account was still up, but the employment history had been thinned out, the kind of thing someone does when they don't want to be found easily but haven't fully committed to disappearing. There was a fragment left, a logistics management role that had ended about 14 months before. The company was based in Youngstown. The name on the account was Todd Buell. Gail turned the laptop toward me. I looked at the photo. He was 30-something, regular-looking, the kind of face you wouldn't look at twice. I tried to feel something and mostly felt tired. Then Gail said, "Hold on." She'd been running a parallel search on fraud victim forums while I was looking at the LinkedIn profile. She'd found a post from about 8 months earlier. A man, somewhere in western Pennsylvania, who'd been on a dating app and matched with a travel nurse, originally from outside Pittsburgh, currently placed in Ohio. She'd been warm and specific, and she'd remembered small details about his life. He'd been recently separated. He had kids. She'd asked for money after about 3 weeks, a wire transfer, a payroll problem. She'd be able to pay it back within the week. He hadn't sent the money. Something had felt wrong and he'd stopped. He described the whole thing. The camera problems, the blocked video calls, the way she'd asked about his kids, the specific emotional texture of it, the feeling of being chosen, of being paid attention to, of being seen by someone after a long time of not being seen. I read it twice. The second time I read it, I got to the part where he described what had hooked him. She'd remembered something small he'd mentioned once, a detail about one of his kids. And I just sat there. Because I knew exactly what that felt like. And I knew now that it wasn't a coincidence, and it wasn't a gift. It was a technique. Someone had built a document, and they were working from it. And one night, running multiple conversations at once, Todd Buell had opened the wrong row. My hands went cold. I mean that literally. I could feel it moving from my fingers up toward my wrists, this specific draining coldness, and I put my palms flat on the table to get them to stop. Gail looked at me and said, "Ray." I said, "I know." She said, "This is not on you. I need you to hear that." I said, "I know." I didn't fully believe it yet. I found the man from the forum post. It took me a couple of days. I sent a message through the forum and he responded. His name was Gary. He lived outside Allentown. He was 51 and he'd been separated about a year when it happened to him. We talked on the phone for 40 minutes. He was glad I called. He said he'd never told most people about it because he didn't know how to explain the part where you almost fell for it. I told him I understood that. I told him I was going to file a complaint with the Internet Crime Complaint Center, and I thought he should too. He said he would. I believed him. I filed mine on a Wednesday afternoon. I sat at the table and filled out the form and submitted it, and then I looked up what IC3 complaints typically result in. The honest answer is not much, most of the time. The volume is too high and the amounts are too low for federal resources to prioritize, unless there's a pattern large enough to build a case around. I thought about Todd Buell and his notes document and his 4 to 6 simultaneous personas, and I thought there was probably a pattern. Whether anyone would do anything about it was a different question. I asked Diane to meet me. I told her I wasn't comfortable with the wire transfer. She'd asked for $3,200 2 days earlier. Payroll freeze. Landlord wouldn't wait. She'd pay it back within the week. But that I wanted to talk through it in person. I said I'd drive halfway. I suggested a diner off 376. She pushed back. She said she couldn't get away. I said I understood, but this was a lot of money and I'd feel better if we'd at least been in the same room once. I said I'd have cash. She agreed to meet me on a Friday at noon. I got there 20 minutes early and took a corner booth where I could see the door. I ordered a coffee I didn't drink. I thought about what I was going to say, and then I stopped thinking about it because I'd been thinking about it for 4 days, and I wasn't going to be more ready than I already was. A man walked in about 5 minutes after noon. 30-something, gray jacket, jeans. He found my table and sat down across from me, and he was already talking before he was fully in the seat. Relaxed, friendly, the kind of energy that's meant to keep you from asking questions. He said Diane sent him. Family emergency, came up this morning, she felt terrible about it, asked her brother to come pick up the money and bring it back to her. He said she'd call me tonight to explain. He said she'd been upset about missing this. He was good at it, I'll give him that. I looked at him for a second and I said, "What's your name?" He said, "Michael." I put my phone on the table and turned it toward him. His name, his address, the LinkedIn fragment, the VoIP registration, the Melissa Prato reverse image search, the forum post, all of it in one document. I said, "Your name is Todd Buell and you live in Youngstown." He looked at the phone. He looked at it for a long time. The Michael thing was gone, just gone, like he'd set it down somewhere. He sat back in the booth and looked at me, and what I saw on his face wasn't panic. It was the same recalibrating thing from when he first sat down. He was still assessing, just working with different information now. He said, "How far did you get?" Not "I can explain this," not "you've got the wrong person." How far did you get? He wanted to know how much of the operation I'd mapped, the same way I'd want to know which systems had failed when I walked into a house. I said, "All the way." He nodded. He picked up the coffee menu and put it back down. I said, "I want to ask you something and I want you to actually answer it. Why me? Out of whoever else you're running right now, why did you message me?" He was quiet for a second and then he said, "Your profile, recently separated, owns a home, self-employed." Flat, like he was reading it off something. Self-employed usually means some liquidity, and no one looking at the accounts. I said, "Say the rest of it." He looked at me. I said, "You told me why in terms of the money. Say the rest." He said, "Your profile language, the way you wrote about your kids, it indicated," he paused, "someone who'd been lonely long enough to move fast." I let that sit. I said, "I told her my daughter was thinking about trying out for soccer." That's the detail I gave. "That's why I'm sitting here, because you asked me how my son's karate class was going." He didn't say anything. I said, "Whose kid does karate?" He looked at the table. I said, "I told her that because it's the kind of thing you tell someone you're starting to trust. And I need you to understand that I actually trusted her. I know what she was. I know what you are. But the part of me that was talking to her, that was real. I want you to know that." He said, "I know." I said, "I don't think you do, but I needed to say it." I pulled up the IC3 confirmation number and slid the phone across the table. I said, "I filed this Wednesday. The man from Allentown is filing separately." I looked up what that usually results in, probably not much. I paused, "But it exists, and now you know it exists." He looked at the screen, something shifted in his face. "Not a lot." I said, "Do you have a kid?" He said, "Yeah." I said, "I thought so." I looked at him for a second. He was just a guy in a gray jacket in a diner. He didn't look like anything special. That was the part I kept coming back to on the drive home. Not that he was calculating or cold, just that he was so completely ordinary. A guy with a kid and a notes document and a Youngstown area code, running 5 or 6 versions of a woman who remembered things, and somewhere in that document was a row with my name on it and a note about a 12-year-old girl who wanted to play soccer in the spring. I put $20 on the table for the coffee I hadn't drunk, and I got up and left. I drove home on 376. I took the exit Diane had mentioned, the one she'd referenced like she'd driven it her whole life, and I thought about what that was. A detail from a drive he'd made 100 times, the road between Youngstown and Pittsburgh, dropped into a conversation to make a woman feel real. One detail among hundreds, a system. The kids were at Karen's that week. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the truck for a while. I thought about the soccer thing, how I'd mentioned it almost as an aside, just a small, hopeful thing about my daughter. How it had felt when Diane seemed to remember it. How that feeling was the whole mechanism, and Todd Buell had known it was the whole mechanism, and he'd built a version of it in a document and deployed it, and it had almost worked. I went inside. I deleted the Hinge app. I didn't make anything out of it. I just did it. Then I picked up my phone and called Derek. He picked up on the 3rd ring and said, "Hey, Dad," in that flat teenage way that somehow still sounds like everything's fine. I asked him what he was doing. He said nothing. I asked if he wanted to come over that weekend, not on my week, just to hang out. He said, "Yeah, maybe, probably." I said okay. I said I'd see him soon. I didn't tell him why I called. He didn't ask. If you want to hear more stories like this, please like and subscribe. It would really mean a lot to me.